The Veilthorn Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years, and in all that time, no species had ever made them afraid. They were the masters of 1,000 worlds, the controllers of 1,000,000 ships, and the destroyers of any race foolish enough to stand against them. Emperor Calvros sat upon his obsidian throne, his massive form draped in armor that gleamed with the light of conquered suns. He was ancient and terrible, a being who had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. And he had grown bored with his own power, so when his admirals brought him news of a strange ship entering imperial space, he leaned forward with something like interest. "Tell me more," he commanded, his voice echoing through the vast throne room where 1,000 courtiers stood in silent attention. Admiral Vinax, a decorated warrior who had crushed rebellions across 3 star systems, bowed low before speaking. "Your Radiance, our border sensors have detected a single vessel crossing into our territory near Desset Prime. It appears to be badly damaged and is moving slowly on failing engines." The Emperor's lips curled into a smile. "One ship?" "One ship, Your Radiance." Laughter erupted from the throne, deep and rumbling, and soon the entire court joined in. The sound filled the chamber like thunder, bouncing off walls decorated with the skulls of conquered kings and the flags of dead. Nation's Admiral Vinax waited for the laughter to fade before continuing. "The vessel matches no known design in our databases. It appears to be constructed primarily of metal alloys and ceramic composites, with no energy shielding and no faster-than-light weapons. By our standards, it is remarkably primitive." "Primitive," the Emperor repeated, savoring the word. "How delightful. It has been so long since we encountered something truly primitive." He waved one massive clawed hand. "Send a scout fleet to intercept this curiosity. I want to know what desperate species sends one broken ship into the heart of my domain." Admiral Vinax bowed again. "It shall be done, Your Radiance. I will dispatch 30 vessels immediately." 30 vessels for one ship," a courtier laughed. "Surely that is excessive." "I wish to be thorough," the Admiral replied without humor. "Even insects can carry disease." The scout fleet departed within the hour, 30 sleek Veilthorn warships cutting through space like predators on the hunt. They found their prey drifting near the outer planets of the Vezek system, and what they discovered made even these hardened warriors pause. The alien ship was ugly by Veilthorn standards. It was angular and blocky, covered in strange protrusions and antenna arrays, its hull scarred by damage that told a story of violence and desperation. Great burns marked its surface, the kind that came from atmospheric re-entry during combat, and thousands of small impacts pocked its armor like a disease. What could have done this? One officer wondered aloud as the fleet surrounded the vessel. Commander Thiessen, leader of the boarding parties, studied the sensor readings with her 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. The damage patterns are inconsistent. Some of these burns are fresh, perhaps days old, while others have been partially repaired and damaged again. This ship has been fighting for a very long time. Fighting what? Another officer asked him. One had an answer. The alien vessel did not respond to hails. It transmitted no identification codes and made no attempt to flee or fight. It simply drifted, silent and dark, like a corpse floating in the void. But the scanners told a different story. "Commander," a technician reported, "the ship is not dead. Its reactors are active, running at temperatures that should be impossible to sustain. There is power flowing through its systems, concentrated in the lower decks. Life signs? Hundreds of them, but they are strange. The readings suggest the crew is alive but not conscious, possibly in some form of suspended animation." Commander Thiessen made her decision. "We board immediately. Full combat protocols. I want every soldier armed and ready for anything." The Veilthorn boarding parties cut through the alien airlock with plasma torches, and the moment they stepped inside, they knew something was wrong. The corridors were too narrow. Velthan soldiers stood 3 meters tall on average, their bodies thick with muscle and armored scales. These passageways were built for creatures barely 2 meters in height, forcing the boarding parties to crouch and squeeze through spaces that felt like tombs. What kind of species builds their ships so small? A soldier grumbled, his weapon scraping against the ceiling. But size was not the strangest thing about the vessel. The walls were covered in decorations. There were images everywhere. Pictures of bipedal creatures standing on alien worlds. Groups of them gathered together with their mouths open in what might have been smiles. Smaller versions of the creatures being held by larger ones. There were symbols and words in an unknown script, colorful banners, and small objects attached to surfaces with apparent care. They decorated their warship, Commander Thyssen whispered. And for the first time in her long career of conquest, she felt something cold settle in her chest. They made it beautiful. They treated it like a home. The soldiers pressed deeper into the vessel, following the power readings and life signs to a massive chamber in the ship's core. What they found there made them stop and stare. Rows upon rows of transparent pods filled the room, each one containing a single creature suspended in frozen sleep. There were hundreds of them, pale and still, their bodies thin and scarred, tubes and wires connecting them to machines that hummed with quiet power. Commander Thyssen approached the nearest pod and studied the being within. It was small, fragile-looking, with soft skin and no natural armor. Its face was strangely flat, with 2 forward-facing eyes and a small mouth. One of its arms ended in a mass of scar tissue where a hand should have been. These creatures have been through war, she said quietly. Look at them. Every single one bears wounds. A technician had found a terminal and was working to translate the ship's database. After several minutes, he turned to the commander with an expression she had never seen on a Velthorn face. Fear. Commander, I have accessed their records. This vessel is called the Perseverance, and these creatures call themselves humans. They come from a world called Earth in a region of space we have never explored. And why are they here? Why did they enter our territory? The technician swallowed hard. They are refugees, Commander. Their colony was destroyed by a species called the Harvesters. Commander Thyssen felt her body relax. The Harvesters were known to the Velthorn, a minor pest species that had been exterminated centuries ago. If these humans were merely fleeing from such weak creatures, they posed no threat. Refugees, she reported to Admiral Vinax via communicator. Nothing more than frightened survivors of a dead world. The Admiral's laughter crackled through the connection. Excellent. Wake them and bring them to the Emperor. He will enjoy adding a new species to his collection of servants. Commander Thyssen looked at the frozen humans, at their scars and their decorated walls and their tiny, fragile bodies. And she gave the order to begin the awakening process. She did not notice the words painted above the chamber door. Words her translator would later render as, "We do not go quietly." She would remember them soon enough. They woke Captain Elena Vance first, because the ship's records identified her as the leader. And the Velthorn always preferred to break leaders before dealing with their followers. She came out of cryogenic sleep slowly, her body shaking as warmth returned to frozen limbs, her lungs gasping for air that tasted wrong and foreign. The Velthorn medical officers watched with clinical interest as she coughed and struggled on the examination table, waiting for the panic that always came when inferior species realized they were prisoners. The panic never came. Captain Vance opened her eyes, dark brown and bloodshot from the freezing process, and looked directly at the massive alien soldiers surrounding her. She studied them for a long moment, taking in their scaled skin and clawed hands and the weapons pointed at her chest. And then she spoke. How many of my people are still alive? Commander Thyssen stepped forward, surprised by the calmness in the human's voice. You are in no position to ask questions, creature. You have entered Veilthorn Imperial space without permission, and you are now property of Emperor Kel Vros. The human's expression did not change. How many of my people are still alive? Answer our questions first, and perhaps we will answer yours. Captain Vance was silent for a moment, and then she nodded. Fine. What do you want to know? The interrogation lasted for 3 days. Commander Thiessen asked about Earth, about human civilization, about their technology and their history and their journey through space. Captain Vance answered every question with simple honesty, never trying to lie or deceive. And what she revealed painted a picture of a species that should have been unremarkable humans had only discovered. Faster than light traveled 2 centuries ago. Their empire, if it could be called that, had consisted of a few dozen colony worlds scattered across a small region of space. They had no great weapons, no ancient knowledge, no special powers. They were simply one more young species trying to find their place among the stars. And then the harvesters had come. They appeared without warning. Captain Vance explained, her voice flat and empty. We did not know they existed until they started destroying our colonies. They came in massive swarms, millions of ships, and they consumed everything. Planets, stations, ships, people. They ate it all. The harvesters were exterminated by our empire centuries ago, Commander Thiessen said. They were pests, nothing more. Maybe to you, Captain Vance replied. To us, they were death itself. We had no defense against them. Our fleets were destroyed in days. Our colonies went silent one by one. Within a year, 90% of humanity was gone. And you fled. Some of us. The Perseverance was part of a refugee fleet. 12 ships carrying the last survivors of Andros 4. We were trying to reach a safe system beyond Harvester territory. What happened to the other 11 ships? Captain Vance was silent for a long moment. They did not make it. While the interrogations continued, the Veilthorn scientists conducted their own investigation into human biology. And what they discovered disturbed them far more than anything Captain Vance had said. These creatures should not exist. The chief xenobiologist reported to Admiral Vinax, his mandibles clicking with agitation. Their homeworld is a death trap by galactic standards. The gravity is crushing. The atmosphere is corrosive. The surface is covered in radiation and toxic chemicals and predators of every imaginable type. And yet they survived. The Admiral observed. They did more than survive. They evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill any other species. Look at these readings. He projected images onto the display screen. Human bones that could heal themselves after breaking. Immune systems that adapted to new diseases in real time. Muscles capable of sustained effort for hours or even days without rest. They are persistence predators, the xenobiologist explained. On their world, they hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could run for entire days without stopping. No other species we have encountered can do this. Impressive for primitives, the Admiral admitted. But hardly a threat to us. There is more, Admiral. Look at their psychological profiles. The images change to show brain scans and behavioral data. They experience a full range of emotions, like most sentient species. But there is something unique in how they respond to stress and danger. When faced with impossible odds, when logic dictates surrender, their brain chemistry actually changes. They become more aggressive, more determined, more willing to sacrifice themselves. They are irrational. No, Admiral. They are something else. They have a concept they call spite. The desire to harm an enemy even at cost to themselves, even when there is no benefit, simply because the enemy deserves to be harmed. Admiral Vinax considered this. A useless emotion, perhaps, but combined with their physical endurance, it makes them dangerous opponents. A human soldier who believes in their cause will fight until their body physically cannot continue. They do not surrender. They do not give up. They simply keep fighting until they win or die. The Admiral dismissed the concern. They are small, soft, and primitive. Whatever fighting spirit they possess is meaningless against Velthorn technology and numbers. But he filed the report anyway, just in case the human crew was awakened over the following weeks. And each one displayed the same unsettling calmness as their captain. They did not beg or plead or grovel like other conquered species. They simply asked about their crewmates, accepted their situation, and waited. The Velthorn guards found them deeply unnerving. They look at us like they are studying us, one soldier complained. Like they are learning our weaknesses. They are prisoners in chains, his commander replied. What could they possibly do? When all 200 humans had been awakened and examined, Emperor Calvros summoned Captain Vance to his throne room. He wanted to see this creature for himself. This leader of refugees who showed no fear, she was brought before him in chains. A tiny figure dwarfed by the massive chamber and the thousands of courtiers who watched her with hungry eyes. The Emperor loomed above her, magnificent and terrible, his ancient armor gleaming. His presence filling the room like a physical weight. Kneel. He commanded. Captain Vance remained standing. You enter my domain without permission, the Emperor said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. You bring your broken ship and your broken people to my borders. You have nothing to offer, nothing to bargain with, nothing that could possibly interest the greatest empire in the galaxy. He leaned forward on his throne. So I will give you a choice. Kneel now, swear loyalty to me, and I will grant your species the honor of serving the Velthorn as slaves. Refuse, and I will have every single one of your people executed slowly. Captain Vance looked up at the Emperor. This being who had ruled 1,000 worlds for 12,000 years. And she did something that made the entire court fall silent. She smiled. You found us in a damaged ship, she said quietly, her voice carrying in the shocked silence. You saw our scars and our wounds and our broken systems, and you thought we were running from something. She took a step forward, and the guards raised their weapons. You never asked what damaged us. You never asked what we were running from. You never asked why a ship called Perseverance was still flying after 11 years alone in the void. The smile widened. Maybe you should have. Emperor Calvros felt something he had not felt in millennia. Uncertainty. What are you saying, creature? Captain Elena Vance straightened her shoulders and met his gaze. I am saying that we were not running. We were hunting. And we finished the hunt. The room erupted in chaos. Admiral Vinax had ignored the flight recorder at first because he believed it contained nothing of value. What could a primitive species show him that he had not already seen in 1,200 years of military service? He was wrong. Technicians worked for days to translate and decode the data, piecing together 11 years of logs and recordings from the ship called Perseverance. And when they finally presented their findings, the Admiral felt his blood turn to ice. This cannot be correct, he whispered, staring at the holographic display. Run the analysis again. We have run it 7 times. Admiral, the data is accurate. The display showed a star map with the Perseverance's journey traced in blue light. It was not the path of refugees fleeing for their lives. It was the path of a hunter stalking prey across 3 star systems for more than a decade. They did not run from the harvesters. The lead analyst explained, his voice shaking. They chased them. This tiny ship with its primitive weapons and its 200 crew members declared war on a species that had destroyed 90% of humanity, and they hunted them across the void. Admiral Vinax watched the recordings in horrified silence, saw the Perseverance diving into harvester formations that outnumbered it 1,000 to 1. Weapons blazing, hull screaming under impacts that should have destroyed it. He saw human engineers working in sections of the ship that were open to vacuum, their bodies protected only by thin suits, making repairs while the battle raged around. Them he saw boarding actions. The humans would dock with harvester ships. The analyst continued, and send teams inside to plant explosives. They knew they would face thousands of enemies. They knew most of them would not return. They went anyway. The footage showed human marines fighting in the cramped corridors of alien vessels, using weapons that seemed crude but devastatingly effective. They moved with a coordination that spoke of desperate practice, covering each other, advancing step by step, leaving dead harvesters in their wake. One recording showed a woman missing, her left arm continuing to fight with a pistol in her remaining hand. Her face twisted with fury, her mouth open in a scream that the silent footage could not capture. She killed 11 harvesters before the explosives detonated and the image cut to static. We counted 147 confirmed boarding actions over 11 years. The analyst said, the humans lost crew members in almost every single one. They never stopped. Admiral Vinax fast-forwarded through the recordings, watching years of warfare compress into minutes. He saw the Perseverance damaged and repaired. Damaged and repaired, again and again. Its hull covered in patches and welds and desperate fixes that kept it flying when any sane species would have abandoned it. Saw the crew shrink from 300 to 200 as losses mounted and could not be replaced. He saw funerals held in the ship's cargo bay, bodies wrapped in cloth and launched into the stars, and he saw the survivors return to their stations immediately afterward to continue the fight. How? He asked finally. How did they survive? How did they keep fighting with no resupply, no reinforcements? No hope of rescue? The analyst hesitated. Admiral, I believe that is the wrong question. Then what is the right question? The right question is, how did they win? The final recording was dated 3 weeks before the Perseverance entered Veilthorn space. It showed a massive harvester fleet gathered around their homeworld. Thousands of ships forming a defensive sphere that should have been impenetrable. The Perseverance attacked alone. This is suicide, Admiral Vinax said. One ship against thousands. It is not possible, but he watched anyway. The human vessel dove straight into the harvester formation, not trying to destroy ships, but forcing its way through them, taking damage that would have killed any Veilthorn vessel 10 times over. The crew had stripped their own quarters for additional armor, welded metal plates to every surface, turned their home into a battering ram. They reached the harvester homeworld. Admiral, the analyst said quietly, we believe the humans had been collecting something during their 11 years of raiding. Every time they boarded a harvester ship, they stole small amounts of a specific material. What material? Harvester reactor cores. They are highly unstable and extremely radioactive. Exposure would kill most species within hours. Admiral Vinax felt sick. The humans collected them for 11 years. They stored them in shielded containers. But the shielding was imperfect. The radiation exposure has caused significant damage to every surviving crew member. We estimate their lifespans have been reduced by decades. They poisoned themselves. They considered it acceptable. They had enough reactor material to build a weapon of enormous power, and they detonated it in the atmosphere of the harvester homeworld. The final image showed a planet wrapped in fire, its surface burning, its atmosphere torn away by the force of an explosion that registered on sensors across 3 star systems. The harvester fleet scattered and fled, only to be hunted down over the following weeks by a damaged ship crewed by dying humans who refused to stop. The harvesters are extinct, the analyst confirmed. The humans killed every single one. They tracked down the survivors and destroyed them without mercy. They did not accept surrenders. They did not take prisoners. They ended the species that had murdered their families and burned their worlds. Admiral Vinax sat in silence for a long time. The message, he finally said. Captain Vance mentioned they transmitted a message before entering our space. What did it say? The analyst accessed the relevant file, and a human voice filled the room. It was Captain Vance, her tone exhausted but triumphant. 2. Any human survivors. This is Captain Elena Vance of the UN's Perseverance. We have completed our mission. The harvesters are extinct. I repeat, the harvesters are extinct. We killed them. We killed every last one of them. If you can hear this message, know that humanity has been avenged. Our people did not die unavenged. Perseverance holds. Find us. The recording ended, and Admiral Vinax realized his hands were shaking. These creatures had looked at the destruction of their civilization, had counted their losses and calculated their odds, and had decided that surrender was not an option. They had spent 11 years dying slowly from radiation poisoning while hunting the species that had wronged them, and they had won not through superior technology or numbers or resources. They had won through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat, and his emperor had just demanded that these people, Nile Admiral Vinax, opened a priority channel to the throne world. Your Radiance, we need to speak immediately. We may have made a terrible mistake, but even as he spoke, his long-range sensors were detecting something else. Hundreds of contacts emerging from the void beyond Veilthorn space, all converging on a single point-all. Following the signal of the Perseverance, the humans were coming, and they were not alone. The throne room had fallen silent, and Emperor Calvaros stared at the small human woman standing in chains before him. She was still smiling, and that smile bothered him more than any weapon ever had. You claim to have destroyed the harvesters, he said slowly, his voice dangerous. You expect me to believe that your primitive species, with your broken ship and your handful of survivors, eliminated an entire race? I do not expect anything from you, Captain Vance replied calmly. I am simply telling you the truth. What you believe is your own concern. Before the Emperor could respond, Admiral Vinax's urgent transmission arrived. The Emperor listened with growing disbelief as his Admiral described the flight recorder data. The 11 years of warfare, the extinction of a species at human hands. The courtiers began to whisper among themselves, their laughter from earlier replaced by nervous murmurs. Bring me the recordings, the Emperor commanded. I will see this evidence for myself. The holographic displays activated, and the throne room watched in stunned silence as the story of the Perseverance unfolded before them. They saw human soldiers charging into impossible odds, saw engineers working in deadly radiation, saw a crew of refugees transform themselves into the most terrifying predators the galaxy had ever known. This changes nothing, the Emperor declared when the recordings ended, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. They defeated a pest species. The Veilthorn are not pests. We are the masters of 1,000 worlds. Your Radiance. Admiral Vinax's voice crackled through the communication system. I have more urgent news. Our long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching Thesek Prime. How many contacts? There was a pause. Hundreds, Your Radiance. Possibly thousands. They are emerging from uncharted space beyond our borders. The Emperor turned to look at Captain Vance, and for the first time, he noticed something in her eyes. Hope, you sent a signal, he said. You called for help. I told you, she replied. We were hunting, not running. We were never alone. We were just scattered. Over the next hours, the situation became clear. Human survivors from across the galaxy had heard the Perseverance's message, had traced its signal, and were now converging on Veilthorn space. They came in ships of every size and design, from massive colony vessels to tiny fighters. All of them scarred by years of running and fighting and surviving. The count reached 300 ships, then 500, then 1,000. They are a fleet, Admiral Vinax reported. His voice strained. A proper military fleet. They have organized themselves during their journey here. They are not refugees anymore, Your Radiance. They are an army. Emperor Calvros watched the sensor displays with cold fury. These humans had tricked him. They had allowed themselves to be captured, had played the part of helpless survivors, all while their rescue fleet approached. But the Veilthorn Empire had not conquered 1,000 worlds by being weak. He would crush these insects and add their skulls to his collection. Mobilize the border fleet, he ordered. All 12,000 dreadnoughts. We will show these creatures what it means to challenge the Veilthorn. The fleet gathered over Thessic Prime, the largest military force the Empire had assembled in centuries. 12,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a small planet. Arranged in perfect formation and awaiting orders. The human fleet arrived 3 days later. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a scattered formation. Their ships damaged and patched and ugly compared to the sleek Veilthorn vessels. Sensor analysis showed they numbered approximately 2,000 ships, barely a fraction of the Imperial force. They are outnumbered 6 to 1, Admiral Vinax observed. They must know they cannot win. Perhaps they have come to surrender, the Emperor suggested. Open a communication channel. Let us hear their pleas for mercy. The channel opened and a human face appeared on the display. It was an older man with gray hair and hard eyes, wearing a uniform that showed the signs of many repairs. I am Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Human Fleet, he announced. We have come for our people. Release Captain Vance and the crew of the Perseverance immediately, or face the consequences. The Emperor laughed, and his court laughed with him. You threaten me? You stand before the mightiest fleet in the galaxy with your pathetic collection of broken ships, and you dare to threaten me? Admiral Chen's expression did not change. I am not threatening. I am informing you of facts. We will recover our people. You can make this easy, or you can make this hard. The choice is yours, but the outcome will be the same. The outcome will be your destruction, the Emperor declared. Attack. The Battle of Thessic Prime began, and it was nothing like the Veilthorn had expected. The human ships did not form defensive positions or try to retreat. They charged directly into the Imperial formation, weapons blazing, shields absorbing damage that would have destroyed them 10 times over. They moved with a coordination that spoke of years of fighting together, covering each other, supporting each other, never leaving a wounded ship behind. Why do they not flee? Admiral Vinax demanded as his fleet suffered losses it had never experienced. They must know they cannot win. Captain Vance, still standing in the throne room in chains, watched the battle displays with fierce pride. You still do not understand, she said quietly. We are not trying to win. We are trying to hurt you. We are trying to make you bleed so badly that you will never forget what happens when you threaten our people. The human ships targeted the largest Veilthorn dreadnoughts, ignoring the smaller vessels, focusing their fire with suicidal determination. When a human ship was damaged beyond repair, its crew did not abandon ship. They aimed their vessels at the nearest enemy and accelerated to maximum speed. They are ramming us, an officer screamed. They are using their ships as weapons. The Veilthorn fleet had never faced an enemy willing to die simply to cause damage. Their tactics were built around the assumption that all species valued self-preservation, that enemies would retreat when defeat became certain, but the humans did not retreat. They fought for 9 hours, and they lost 60% of their fleet. Hundreds of ships destroyed, thousands of humans killed. And still they kept coming, wave after wave, refusing to stop until either the enemy was defeated or they had nothing left to fight with. And then something changed. The human fleet suddenly pulled back, reforming into a tight formation around a single massive vessel that had remained at the rear of their forces. Admiral Vinax recognized it as a colony ship, one of the largest in the human fleet, and he felt a cold chill run down his spine. What are they doing? The Emperor demanded. Captain Vance smiled. "They are showing you why you should have accepted their terms." The colony ship's cargo bays opened, and something emerged. A weapon massive and terrible, cobbled together from salvaged technology and desperate engineering. It was ugly and crude, and looked like it might tear itself apart at any moment, but the energy readings were unmistakable. "That is a planet killer," Admiral Venax whispered. They built a planet killer. The human fleet had not come to rescue their people. They had come to deliver an ultimatum. Surrender the prisoners or watch Thessac Prime burn. They would not dare, the Emperor said, but his voice wavered. They would kill billions of innocent beings. Captain Vance turned to look at him. "You killed billions of our innocent beings. You are holding our people prisoner and threatening to execute them. What exactly do you think we are willing to do?" The communication channel crackled, and Admiral Chan's face reappeared. "Emperor Calvros, you have 1 hour to release our people. If you do not, Thessac Prime will be destroyed. This is not a bluff. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The channel closed, and silence fell over the throne room the Emperor had ruled for 12,000 years. He had conquered 1,000 worlds and destroyed countless species. He had never once considered surrender, but as he looked at the battle displays, at the burning wreckage of his fleet, at the weapon pointed at his border world, he realized something that shook him to his core. These humans were not afraid of him. They were not afraid of anything. And that made them the most dangerous enemy he had ever faced. The hour passed in silence, and Emperor Calvros sat upon his obsidian throne, staring at the holographic display that showed the human weapon aimed at Thessac Prime. Billions of his subjects lived on that world, going about their daily lives. Unaware that their fate hung in the balance, his advisors offered their counsel. And all of it was useless. "We should call their bluff," one general argued. "No species would destroy a populated world simply to rescue 200 prisoners. They are trying to intimidate us. And if they are not bluffing?" Another asked, "Are you willing to gamble billions of lives on that assumption?" "We cannot show weakness. If we surrender to these humans, every conquered species in the Empire will see that we can be defeated. There will be rebellions across 1,000 worlds. There will be no worlds left to rebel if these creatures continue to fight. You saw the battle. You saw what they were willing to sacrifice. They are not rational." Captain Elena Vance stood in her chains, watching the debate with quiet interest. The Veilthorn guards had stopped pointing their weapons at her, and some of them had moved away entirely. As if being close to a human had become dangerous, the Emperor noticed her watching and felt his anger rise. "You find this amusing?" "I find it familiar," she replied. "Your advisors are doing exactly what ours did when the Harvesters first attacked, arguing about pride and weakness while the threat grows closer. We wasted months on such debates, and millions died because of our hesitation. Do not compare your primitive counsels to the wisdom of the Veilthorn. I am not comparing. I am warning. You have 30 minutes left to make a decision, and you are spending that time arguing about things that do not matter." The Emperor rose from his throne and descended the steps until he stood directly before her. Even in chains, even surrounded by enemies, she did not flinch. He could see the scars on her hands and face, the gray in her hair, the weariness in her eyes. But underneath all of that, he saw something that disturbed him deeply. He saw someone who had already made peace with death. "Why did you come here?" he asked quietly, so his court could not hear. "Your ship was damaged. You could have found another system to hide in. Why did you enter Veilthorn space?" "Because we were tired," she admitted. 11 years of war had broken us. We had no resources left, no strength to keep running. When we saw your border patrols, we knew we had found either our salvation or our end, and you were willing to accept either outcome. We had already won the only victory that mattered. The harvesters were dead. Our revenge was complete. What happened next was secondary. The Emperor studied her face. You expected us to kill you. I expected you to try. I did not expect my people to find us first. And now that they have? Captain Vance met his gaze. Now we have options. But I want you to understand something, Emperor. Even if you destroy our fleet, even if you kill every human in this system, it will not matter. There are more of us out there, scattered across the galaxy, hiding, surviving, waiting. Humanity cannot be exterminated because we do not give up. We do not stop fighting. We adapt and endure, and eventually we come back stronger. She took a step closer. You can make us your enemy and spend the next 1,000 years hunting us through the stars, losing ships and soldiers and resources in a war that will never end. Or you can make us your ally and gain access to a species that turned the extinction of our civilization into the extinction of our enemies. You propose an alliance? I propose a partnership. Your empire has resources we need. We have something you need even more. And what is that? Soldiers who do not fear death. Engineers who work in conditions that would kill your people. Warriors who see impossible odds as a challenge instead of a barrier. You have conquered 1,000 worlds with technology and numbers. But the universe is vast, and there are enemies you have not yet faced. When those enemies come, you will want humanity standing beside you. The Emperor was silent for a long time, and the court watched with held breath. No one had ever spoken to him this way. No one had ever offered him terms instead of begging for mercy. You killed the harvesters, he finally said. You exterminated an entire species. Yes, without mercy. Without hesitation, they murdered our children. They burned our worlds. They tried to erase us from existence. What would you have done? The Emperor thought of his own empire, of the species he had conquered, and the worlds he had claimed. He had always believed that strength was the only thing that mattered, that the weak deserved to be ruled by the strong. But these humans had been weak. They had been outnumbered and outgunned and facing extinction. And they had still won. Perhaps strength was not the only thing that mattered after all. Release her chains, he ordered. The court gasped. The guards hesitated. Captain Vance showed no reaction except a slight relaxation of her shoulders. Your Radiance. Admiral Vanax's voice came through the communication system. What are your orders? The human fleet is preparing to fire. The Emperor looked at the woman standing before him. This small, fragile creature who had helped kill a species and survived 11 years of war and faced him. Without fear, tell them to stand down, he said. Tell them their people will be returned. Tell them the Velthorn Empire wishes to discuss terms of alliance. The silence that followed was absolute. Captain Vance extended her hand. A human gesture of agreement that the translators had already explained. You will not regret this decision. I am 12,000 years old, the Emperor replied, taking her hand in his massive clawed grip. I have regretted many decisions, but I suspect you are right. This will not be one of them. The Battle of Desik Prime ended not with destruction, but with negotiation. The human fleet powered down its weapons and sent shuttles to retrieve their people. And the Velthorn fleet pulled back to allow them passage in the weeks that followed. Diplomats from both species met to discuss the terms of alliance. It was not an easy process, as thousands of years of cultural differences had to be bridged. But both sides were motivated by something stronger than pride. The humans needed resources and allies to rebuild their civilization. The Velthorn needed warriors who could face the threats lurking in the unexplored regions of the galaxy. Together, they could become something neither could achieve alone. Historians would later call it the greatest diplomatic achievement in galactic history. Others would call it the moment when the universe changed forever. But those who had been there, who had seen the battle and heard Captain Vance speak in the throne room, knew the truth. The Veilthorn had not been defeated by human weapons or human ships. They had been defeated by something far more powerful. They had been defeated by a species that looked at impossible odds and saw opportunity, instead of despair, by a species that refused to surrender even when surrender was the only logical choice, by a species that smiled in the face of death and asked what came next. Emperor Kelvros would spend the remaining millennia of his reign grateful for that day, not because the humans had spared his world, but because they had taught him something he had forgotten in 12,000 years of conquest. Strength was not about power. Strength was about will, and the humans had more will than any species he had ever encountered. They had looked into the void, into the darkness, into the certainty of their own extinction, and they had refused to accept it. They had persevered, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.